Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're looking into the disappearance of Maura Murray.
Yeah, it's a case that's been in the public consciousness for a long time now.
Absolutely. It's been almost 20 years since she disappeared.
It has, and I think part of the reason it's so compelling is that there's so many unanswered questions.
Definitely. So for anyone who might not know the story, let's just start with the basics. Who was Maura Murray and what exactly happened?
So Maura Murray was a 21-year-old nursing student
Yeah.
at the University of Massachusetts Amherst,
Mm-hmm.
and she seemed to have a promising future ahead of her.
Yeah.
But then a series of strange events happened that culminated in her vanishing.
Okay, so it was February of 2004.
Yeah, February 9th, 2004.
Right, and that's when her car was found crashed on a rural road in New Hampshire.
Exactly. Route 112 near Woodsville.
Right. And that's when she disappeared.
That's right. She was never seen again.
So let's rewind a little bit because you mentioned these strange events leading up to her disappearance. What exactly happened in the days before she vanished?
Well, one of the most puzzling things is that just a few days before she disappeared, she received a phone call while she was working security at UMass.
Okay.
And it seems that whatever was said during that call left her visibly shaken.
Oh, wow. So we don't actually know what was said during the phone call.
No, the content of that conversation remains a mystery to this day.
So it's kind of like this big question mark hanging over the whole case, right?
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder what could have been so upsetting that it would lead to her disappearing just days later.
Right. It really does.
So after this phone call, her behavior started to get a little bit strange.
Yeah, she started doing some things that are hard to explain.
Like what?
For example, she started researching directions to Vermont online.
Vermont.
Yeah, and she even inquired about renting a condo there.
It's almost like she was planning some sort of secret getaway.
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it?
And then to make things even more confusing, on February 9th, the day she disappeared, she emailed her professors claiming that there was a family emergency and that she needed to be out of class for a week.
But here's the thing. There was no family emergency.
Wow, so she was deliberately misleading people.
It seems that way, and that's another one of those big question marks in this case.
So if she was planning on disappearing, why lie about a family emergency?
Exactly. It just adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing.
Okay, so she packs up her car, a black Saturn sedan, and hits the road.
Right.
And that's when she ends up crashing on this rural road in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about the crash itself. What do we actually know about what happened?
Well, around 7:30 p.m. that evening, a school bus driver named Butch Atwood came across her car.
Okay.
It was crashed on the side of Route 112, and he stopped to see if she needed help.
That makes sense. He was just trying to be a good Samaritan.
Exactly. And according to Atwood, Maura told him that she had already called roadside assistance.
Okay.
But here's another strange detail. Cell service was notoriously bad in that area.
Oh, really?
And there's no record of her ever making that call.
That's so bizarre. Why would she lie about calling for help?
That's a question that has haunted investigators for years.
Yeah, I can see why.
Was she trying to buy time? Was she afraid of someone finding her?
Or maybe she was disoriented from the crash and not thinking clearly.
It's possible.
So Atwood leaves her at the car thinking that help is on the way.
Yeah, he assumed that roadside assistance would be there soon.
Right. But when he got home, he decided to report the incident to the police anyway, just to be safe.
And that's when things get really interesting.
What do you mean?
When the police arrived at the crash site, just 10 minutes after Atwood left, Maura was gone.
Wait, she was completely gone.
Completely vanished.
That's a tiny window of time. Where could she have possibly gone in 10 minutes?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And there was no sign of her at the scene.
The car was locked,
Okay.
and there were no signs of a struggle.
So it's not like she was abducted from the scene.
Right. It doesn't seem that way.
But then where did she go?
Well, there were footprints in the snow leading away from the car.
Footprints in the snow.
Yeah, indicating that she left on foot.
But into the woods.
It seems like it, but why?
Okay, so we've got this phone call a few days before she disappears where she's visibly upset.
Mm-hmm.
Then she starts planning this trip to Vermont,
Right.
lies to her professors about a family emergency, packs up her car, and then crashes it on a remote road in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
and then vanishes into thin air.
It's a baffling sequence of events.
To say the least.
And it's just the beginning of the story.
Okay, so we've set the stage. We've got this incredibly mysterious disappearance.
Yeah.
What happens next? How does the investigation unfold, and what are some of the theories that emerge to try to explain what happened to Maura Murray?
Well, that's where things get even more complicated.
I bet they do.
Because despite a massive search effort, Maura was never found.
Never.
And the case remains unsolved to this day.
So almost 20 years later, we still don't know what happened to her.
We don't. And that's what makes this case so fascinating and so frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's delve into those theories now and see if we can make some sense of this very puzzling disappearance.
All right, let's do it. Well, obviously, the first thing you do in a case like this is you got to search, right?
Right, absolutely. You've got to try to find her.
Exactly. And in Maura's case, the search was massive. I mean, they really pulled out all the stops.
I can imagine. I mean, we're talking about rural New Hampshire in February.
Exactly. You've got freezing temperature, snow on the ground.
Yeah, not exactly easy conditions to be searching for someone.
No, not at all. I mean, they had search parties combing the woods. They used tracking dogs. They even brought in aerial surveillance.
Wow, that's a lot of resources. So did they find anything?
Well, that's the thing. Despite all of their efforts, Maura just seemed to have vanished without a trace.
It's like she just disappeared into thin air.
It really is, and that's what makes this case so perplexing.
You mentioned tracking dogs. Did they pick up her scent at all?
Yeah, they did, actually, and that's where things get even more interesting.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the dogs were able to follow Maura's scent for about 100 yards from the crash site.
Okay.
And then it just stopped.
Wait, just stopped like that?
Yeah, it's as if she just vanished into thin air.
What are the possible explanations for that? Could she have gotten into a vehicle?
That's one possibility, and it's one that investigators have considered very seriously.
I mean, it would make sense, right? If someone picked her up from the crash site, that would explain why the dogs lost her scent.
Exactly, but then that raises a whole other set of questions.
Like, who would pick her up and why?
Right. Was it someone she knew? Was it a random stranger? Was it someone with bad intentions?
It's a chilling thought to think that someone might have taken advantage of her in that situation.
Absolutely, and it's one of the theories that has been explored extensively in this case.
But if someone did abduct her, wouldn't there have been signs of a struggle at the crash site?
You would think so, but remember the car was locked, and there was no evidence of a fight.
That's true. But couldn't she have gone with someone willingly? Maybe she knew her abductor?
It's possible. I mean, we just don't know.
So we've got the possibility of an abduction, but we don't have a lot to go on.
Right. It's just one of many theories that have been put forward to try to explain Maura's disappearance.
So what are some of the other theories?
Well, another theory that has gained a lot of traction is that Maura intentionally staged her own disappearance.
You mean like she ran away?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people believe that she may have been running from something or that she simply wanted to start a new life.
What kind of evidence is there to support that theory?
Well, proponents of this theory often point to her actions in the days leading up to her disappearance.
Right, like the trip planning and the email to her professors.
Exactly. It does seem like she was preparing to leave, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can see that, but wouldn't it be a little strange to stage a car accident as part of a planned disappearance?
Yeah, it does seem a bit extreme. But some people believe that the crash was genuine and that her decision to disappear was a spur-of-the-moment thing.
So maybe she crashed her car, panicked, and decided to just run away.
It's possible. But of course, there are also those who believe that the crash was all part of the plan.
A way to throw people off her trail?
Exactly.
It's hard to know what to believe.
It really is, and that's what makes this case so fascinating.
So we've got the abduction theory and the running away theory. Are there any other possibilities?
Well, there's also the theory that Maura wandered off into the wilderness after the crash and succumbed to the elements.
That's a sad thought, but I guess it's possible, especially given the conditions.
Right. It was February, New Hampshire. It was freezing cold, and she was out there alone.
And if she was disoriented from the crash, or maybe even intoxicated, she might have wandered off in the wrong direction and gotten lost.
Exactly. Once she was lost out there in the wilderness, it wouldn't have taken long for hypothermia to set in.
So we've got three main theories: abduction, running away, or succumbing to the elements.
Right. And each one has its own set of pros and cons.
I guess the question is, which one is the most likely?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we may never know for sure.
It's frustrating, isn't it, to have all these pieces of the puzzle, but not be able to put them together.
It is, but that's the nature of Unsolved Mysteries. Sometimes you have to be comfortable with not knowing all the answers.
And I guess that's part of what keeps people coming back to these cases year after year.
It is the mystery, the intrigue, the possibility that one day the truth might finally be revealed.
I remember when this case first broke, it was all over the news.
Oh, yeah, it was huge.
And I think it's continued to capture people's imaginations ever since.
It has, and I think part of that is because it's so relatable, I mean, anyone could imagine themselves in Maura's shoes.
Right, she was just a young woman going about her life.
Exactly. And then suddenly she's gone without a trace.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
It really is. And it's something that I think we all fear on some level.
The idea that someone we love could just vanish without a trace.
Exactly. And that's why I think this case continues to resonate with people even after all these years.
So what happened to Maura Murray? Did she run away? Was she abducted? Did she get lost in the woods?
Honestly, we may never know for sure.
But I guess that's the beauty of a good mystery, right? It keeps us guessing, it keeps us thinking, it keeps us searching for answers.
Exactly. And even if we never find out what happened to Maura, I think there's still a lot we can learn from her case.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, I think it reminds us that even in today's world, with all of our technology and our surveillance, there are still places where people can disappear.
That's a sobering thought.
It is. But it's also a reminder to be careful, to be aware of our surroundings, and to take steps to protect ourselves.
I think it also highlights the importance of human connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if Maura had been with someone that night, if she had had someone to call for help, maybe things would have turned out differently.
It's a reminder to cherish our loved ones and to stay connected with the people who matter most.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about the disappearance of Maura Murray,
Yeah.
explored the different theories about what might have happened to her,
Yeah.
and discussed the enduring power of mystery.
It's a case that really makes you think.
It does, and it's one that I know will stay with me for a long time.
Me too.
Uh,
And, it's almost like the more we learn about the case, the more questions we have.
Absolutely. It's like
Ah.
every detail, every discrepancy just leads to more theories and more speculation.
I mean, think about that box of wine and that damaged bottle of alcohol that were found in her car.
Right. That's a detail that's always stuck with me. It just adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing.
Exactly. Was she drinking before the crash? If so, how much? And could that have played a role in her disappearance?
I remember reading that there were some reports that suggested she may have purchased alcohol at a liquor store earlier that day.
Right, but then other reports claim that there's no evidence of that purchase.
So another question mark, another piece of the puzzle that we just can't seem to fit in.
It is, and it makes it really hard to figure out what actually happened.
I mean, if she did buy alcohol that day, it could support the theory that she was intoxicated, which could explain why she might have crashed her car or maybe even wandered off into the woods disoriented.
Exactly. But if she didn't buy alcohol, then where did it come from? Was it already in her car? Or did someone plant it there?
That's a scary thought, the idea that someone might have tampered with the evidence.
It is, and it raises even more questions about what really happened that night.
We've talked a lot about Maura's actions and her state of mind, but it's important to remember that she was a young woman alone on a dark road in a remote area.
Absolutely, and that makes her a potential target for someone with bad intentions.
Right. We can't rule out the possibility that she was abducted, even if there wasn't any sign of a struggle at the crash site.
And that abrupt end to her scent trail, just 100 yards from her car, really lends credence to that theory.
It does. It makes you wonder if someone picked her up and then drove her away from the area.
It's possible, and if that's the case, then we may never know what happened to her.
That's a chilling thought, but it's one that we have to consider.
We do. And it's a reminder that even in today's world, people can still disappear without a trace.
So after all this time, after years of investigations and countless theories, we're still left with more questions than answers.
It's true, and I think that's part of what makes this case so enduring.
The mystery, the intrigue, the not knowing.
Exactly. It keeps us coming back to, it keeps us searching for answers even when we know they might be impossible to find.
It's like a puzzle that we can't quite solve.
It is. And sometimes I think the most important thing isn't finding all the answers, but rather learning to live with the questions.
That's a good point. I think it's easy to get caught up in the need for a resolution, but sometimes the journey is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely. And in this case, the journey has been a long and winding one.
It has, and it's taken us down some pretty dark paths.
But it's also shown us the incredible resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering hope of families who refuse to give up on their loved ones.
And the dedication of investigators and amateur sleuths who are determined to uncover the truth no matter how long it takes.
It's a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, there is still beauty to be found in the search for truth, in the pursuit of justice, and in the unwavering belief that even the most complex mysteries can one day be solved.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the disappearance of Maura Murray.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll finally have the answers we've been searching for.
Until then, the mystery continues. Thanks for listening, everyone.